Hello, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be talking about the top 10 contemporary romances of all time according to you. This is the second video that I'm doing here in the series. If you didn't catch the first one, I'll leave a link in the description down below to my top 10 historical romances of all time video. It's one of my endeavors for this year to collect the best romances according to both me and you and present them to you here. I just feel like it's nice to have a place to direct people when they're asking where to start in the romance genre. These videos are my way of doing that. I also think it's fun to just see what y'all are into and see how that aligns or doesn't align with my own personal taste. So I'm excited to walk through these contemporary romances here with you today. I took your submissions from a form, and this time I was actually wise enough to ask you in the form that I collected this information on what exactly it is about these books that you really enjoy. So I'm going to be including some of your submissions in this video. So you're gonna get my thoughts, but you're also gonna get your own thoughts or other fellow subscribers' thoughts on these contemporary romances. So without further ado, let's get into the top 10 contemporary of all time according to you. Now, first up, we have a book that I think is kind of a wild card pick, not because I feel like it's a rare read or anything, or by an author that I've never heard of, but because until a few months ago, I feel like this book was definitely one that wasn't talked about a lot and in my eyes was kind of underrated, and that book is 11 Other Words by Christina Lauren. I personally feel like this book is the ultimate summer read, and it might be my favorite book by this author-writing duo. This book is about Macy and Elliot, who at the start of the story are adults, well, adulting for a lack of a better word. Macy is a pediatrics resident, and Elliot is an adult person who is also employed. They bump into each other at a coffee shop, and we can tell instantly that these two have chemistry and that they have a past together, and they don't seem to have a ton of hard feelings towards each other when they meet up at this coffee shop, coincidentally, and they decide that they are going to keep in touch. I think Elliot asks for Macy's number, but things are a little bit complicated because Macy already has a fiance of her own, so the relationship that we are seeing unfold before us is one that is sort of complex. We're getting the past timeline when Macy and Elliot were childhood friends and really bonded over their collective love of the written word. This book is very heavy on love of literature. And then in the present day, we get to see Macy and Elliot kind of working through maybe what went wrong in the past without really fully knowing what happened in the past until obviously the very end of the book. Also, seeing Macy contend with the fact that she is kind of already in love with someone else. So it makes for a really gripping and fun contemporary romance. I am a sucker for childhood friends to lovers stories, as I'm sure many of you already know, and this is one of the few books that focuses on a love of literature or books within books that I didn't completely loathe. I don't know what it is, but anytime a book is an ode to the written word or about authors or whatever, I'm not super into it. This book actually I loved, and I felt like having books be what these two young people bonded over, I thought it was really sweet. I think this book is superior to its new, hotter cousin, Every Summer After. I think you'll definitely seem to like this one as well. This one beat out Every Summer After by a very large margin when it came to nominations. One of you said, and I'm going to be looking at my computer screen periodically so I can get verbatim the words that you said, this book gets what it feels like to fall in love as a teenager so right. Plus, I'm trash for the one and done hero and a second chance love story after a long separation. Christina Lauren says this is women's fiction, but I don't really know why. I guess it focuses more on Macy, but I would still call this romance. And honestly, I would agree. I love this story. It definitely feels tonally different than a lot of Christina Lauren's other stories. There's just something so swoony about that first love who you reconnect with years later. A delightful story, and you'll seem to agree, which I love. In spot number 9, another summer themed romance that will always have a place in my heart and on my shelves. It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. While I love this book with the passion of 1,000 fiery burning suns, I am getting sick of talking about it. But if someone finds this video in 10 years and is looking back at the old contemporary romances, 10 years ago, I'm not going to let them down by not telling them what this book is about and not telling them why I love it. So here we go. It Happened One Summer is a fish out of water romance starring our Alexis Rose inspired heroine, Piper. Piper is shipped off to her deceased father's hometown with her little sister, Hannah, and they are expected to get real jobs and get their shit together, which they do in style, of course. Piper along the way ends up falling for crab boat fisherman Brendan, who has a thing for spoiled rich girls, and boy, what a refreshing delight that is. For the uninitiated, It Happened One Summer is one of my favorite romances of all time. I just feel like it's the perfect blend of funny, lighthearted, and serious and swoony. And according to y'all, you've said it before, I think by you, they mean me. I really think it's Brendan's loving her because rather than loving her despite her quirks that really sells this book. Plus, the spice is hot. How could I forget? This book is one of the steamiest here on this list. Tessa Bailey does dirty talk and sex scenes unlike anyone that I've read before. I feel like this one is worth a read anytime, but particularly in the summer. I'm glad I'm putting this video out in the summer because, you know, maybe you're just dipping your toes in contemporary romance right now and you need a list, a place to go, and here I am with that list. Regardless of what time of year, honestly, that you pick up this book, it is a delight from start to finish. I think Tessa Bailey is very hit or miss for people, but she's definitely a hit for me. I would say like 80% of the time. And she's an author who I think really puts the comedy in a rom-com. She has so much fun writing her books. It's very evident to see. And yeah, pick this one up. It's a blast. In spot number 8, we have a book that I am surprised to see on this list because it's one that I feel like I don't really hear people talking about very often, except for myself, which now that I'm thinking about it, I think it kind of makes sense why this would be on this list if I talk about it a lot and you're subscribed to my channel and giving me your favorite romances of all time. The Bride Test by Helen Huang is a book about our two main characters, Kai and Esme. Kai is autistic and he believes that he is completely incapable of romantic love. Instead, he focuses almost all of his time and energy on his high-powered career. Now, Kai's mom is concerned that Kai's life isn't necessarily as fulfilling as he is leading people to believe that it is. She kind of sees through his bullshit and she embarks on a journey to find Kai a perfect bride. So she travels to Vietnam and ends up meeting Esme. Esme is who Kai's mother ends up bringing back to the States for Kai, but the catch is Esme has to woo Kai and convince him that he is capable of love in order to secure a better life for not only herself, but also her family who is still in Vietnam. This is one of the only contemporary romances that I have ever cried while reading, which in my eyes is kind of a good thing. I'm a Scorpio. I don't get very many opportunities to really release all of my very plentiful emotions, so getting to do it in a cathartic way with a really good book is acceptable in my eyes. I just adored this book because it feels very real to me, and Kai is such a swoon-worthy hero who doesn't know that he is swoon-worthy, which is something that I am finding is very underrated. Like, don't get me wrong, I love a cocky hero or a grumpy hero who knows he's hot, but a hero who doesn't know what a catch he is? 10 out of 10 every time. And y'all also make some good points. I love the unorthodox for the genre conflict, how real the characters feel, the unbelievable but still swoon-worthy romance, and of course the steam. And I couldn't agree more. Next up, we have a classic, undeniable favorite for so many of you, and it's one that I will say I'm not necessarily sure that I love quite as strongly, but it's one that I definitely understand the hype for, and it is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. Now, hear me out. I get the appeal of a co-working enemies to lovers story set in a publishing house. I think the movie did it better. At the start of the book, two publishing houses have recently merged and Josh and Lucy are forced to work together, which wouldn't be a big deal except for that these two different publishing houses that have merged together, they have very, very different cultures and as a result, very different kinds of employees. Lucy, the fun-loving and quirky teacup chihuahua-sized heroine, is constantly at odds with Josh, who thinks the color gray is sexy. We get a lot of fun moments of banter until their hatred turns to steamy elevator encounters and caretaking scenes. This is one of the most successful workplace romances in my eyes. I feel like it's sadly pretty rare to find a workplace romance that isn't a weird power imbalance of like boss employee, and I think this one plays with the workplace setting in a really fun way. I like the way that the two were at odds together, and I will admit I didn't hate the fact that this was set in a publishing house. I will say when I reread this book late last year, I did notice some things that I think will cause this book to not age particularly well, namely some fat shaming moments that I felt were completely unnecessary, but I understand how some people are willing to overlook that stuff and still find this a favorite. One subscriber said, "I know it's basic and this is an old contemporary at this point, but I just love it. It opened the world of contemporary romances to me and I found the writing great. I just love the character work and it's a classic for a reason." And a couple of you actually pointed out that the note passing and post-it moments were some of your favorites and were super memorable to you, and I can't argue with that. Oh boy, the first book on this list that I truly do not understand, Beach Read by Emily Henry. This book follows January and Gus. January is escaping to her family's beach house to contend with some kind of recent family drama that is making her question if love is actually real, which is a real tricky bitch as a romance author. Gus, our hero, is doing more or less the same thing, though his genre of choice, or like his genre that he writes, is literary fiction. January and Gus have a little bit of a past together, but the book is mostly spent in the present as January and Gus end up swapping genres for the summer in order to get out of this writing slump that they are both in. Now, telling you the synopsis for this book, it makes it sound like something that I personally should or would like. But the non-romantic elements of the story are really what make this book not my favorite and a bit of a downer. And since I'm not in the business of spoiling books for recommendation videos, I can't really get into the details or the weeds of what exactly about this book didn't work for me, but just know that this book is definitely heavy on some emotional topics such as grief, such as cheating, and I think that that kind of weighs down the story, even if I did end up really, really enjoying the romantic elements of this book. And to this book's credit, the romance really is a delight. This isn't a childhood friends to lovers story by any means, but these two characters do have a little bit of a shared past, sort of a chance encounter, like missed encounter sort of situation. I think both of them were in relationships at the time that they met in grad school, and so they couldn't explore their really explosive chemistry back in the day. And now that they are kind of world weary and I guess hardened, they definitely spend some time kind of getting there and getting into each other's pants, I guess you could say. But when they do finally get there, it is absolutely delightful and very, very swoon-worthy. I do distinctly remember when I read this book being so disappointed in it, but once I got to the like final, I guess you could say reveal, or this like very explosive chemistry moment between the two of them, I was smitten. And though the surrounding elements in the story are ones that I didn't personally enjoy, it didn't stop y'all from rating this book so highly. So let me go ahead and read you what about this book worked for y'all. Sans the adventures to discover the remnants of a cult, Beach Read read like a love story that I can imagine happening in real life. Don't get me wrong, I love a good out of left field, totally unexpected type story, but there's something so charming about realistic looking people with realistic baggage falling in love. Someone else said, I've read this book 3 times and every time it makes me feel good and bad, but in the best way. And I will say, we do love duality here. I think if you were in the market for a romance that does more than just be a romance, I think this is a book that you would actually really, really enjoy. I know there are some people out there who are not really looking for a smutty romance, much to my own dismay. So if you're looking for something that is swoony, has a little bit of steam, not much steam, but really focuses on the tender emotions between people and also the complicated emotions just around life in general, I guess, and some of the hardships that can pop up throughout one's life, I think maybe this is a book for you, even if I maybe think it's a little overrated. Now we're gonna get into the books with a truly wild amount of nominations. In the last video that I did, the historical romance video, there were books that definitely were standouts in the genre, but I will say this contemporary one, wow, y'all really showed out when it came to what you nominated, and these top 5 really had a ton of nominations. Y'all really, really enjoyed these books. I'm excited to talk about them because in number 5, a book that transcends just a simply good book and goes straight into brilliant territory is Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is one of my favorite books of all time, and it definitely deserves to be at the top of any recommendation list for contemporary romances written in the past few years. This book is about our titular character, Eve, who is in a bit of a pickle when her family is threatening to take away her trust fund. Now, Eve, as the little sister of the 2 elder Brown sisters, is kind of the flaky one. She's constantly cycling between different career paths and jobs and just trying to figure out exactly where she fits in and what she's best at, because she's tried a lot of things and nothing seems to really hold her attention or make her feel like she is the best at it. Now she's in a situation where she really just needs to find a job, stick to it, and hold it down for a few months so that she doesn't lose this trust fund that she's become accustomed to. The job that she finds is one that she finds through a series of unfortunate events, and I loved the journey to get there. I also just really loved the job that she ends up with, which is a chef position at a bed and breakfast working for the grumpy owner, Jacob, and I cannot describe how delicious this book is, but I'll attempt to do so. The relationship between Jacob and Eve was perfection. I love the progression of the relationship from this sort of like antagonistic one, not a true enemies to lovers, but an antagonistic relationship to one that is so romantic and so swoony and also incredibly steamy. Especially loved watching Jacob fight his feelings for Eve. He is definitely a grump through and through to everyone in the story, not just Eve, which I appreciated, and seeing him have to work through his thoughts internally and also with friends about how Eve is just really getting to him, right? Like she's really irritating, but he can't help but notice how stunningly beautiful she is, how much he wants to fuck her. It's a lot, it's delicious, it is delightful, and I loved that element of the story. It's something that I feel like I don't see very often, a guy really having to like struggle with his complicated feelings towards a woman. It's usually just like, I want to have sex with her and that's it, but here there was a little bit more to it, which I appreciated. Obviously, this book had some of the sexiest scenes that I have personally read in a contemporary romance, traditionally published or otherwise. I really found myself blushing, and I'm not someone who is easy to blush, right? Like I've read a lot of romances in my day. I've seen a smutty scene or or two, but the ones in this book definitely made me blush at their honesty and at the novelty, I would say, of some of the things that happen in this book, things that I definitely was not expecting. I also really appreciated that in this book, we do have two characters who are kind of on this journey of self-exploration. They're trying to figure their own shit out, trying to figure out what they want out of life, but it doesn't make the story feel like a downer, unlike some other books on this list. But let's hear from you and what you said. This book made my little autistic heart so happy. Eve's realization of her autism made me cry with joy. There are scenes that made me laugh out loud, and Talia Hibbert is just really at the top of the contemporary game. An enemies to lovers that actually felt earned. Not a surprise, I've loved you this whole time one. Combined with a love that you actually believe in, and a purple dildo. Moving on to another practical shoe-in, I would say, for this list. A book that I actually haven't read in a hot minute. I'm not sure how valuable my own opinions will be on this book. I'm gonna definitely rely on y'all for this one. Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This book is about first son, Alex Claremont, and his enemies to lovers relationship with Prince Henry of England. The surrounding story is a cathartic reimagining of the 2016 election with the feeling of a sort of celebrity romance. You do get these dodging paparazzi scenes and a lot of partying, mixed with some sort of serious elements as well. And while I read this book many moons ago, practically at the start of my career here on YouTube, I remember really enjoying it. It really felt nice to see an alternative of the United States that wasn't quite as much of a dumpster fire as what we're dealing with here now, and having a full cast of queer characters made the story something that I feel like makes it a standout in the contemporary romance genre. I'll say, when I think back to this book, I don't necessarily think about the romantic elements of the story as much. The only thing that really comes to mind for me is the exchanging of historical love letters. The core relationship, or like the core steamy moments, that sort of thing, are not super memorable for me, but I really enjoyed the kind of like surrounding elements of the story so much, and that's why it has such a lasting impact on me. But it has been a while again since I've read this book, so let's hear from y'all and what you personally enjoyed about the story. I think what sets it apart from a lot of other romances to me is the relationships the main characters have with the side characters that really make them seem more three-dimensional than a lot of other romance protagonists I've read. Then when Alex and Henry are together, you understand them and relate to them, and it makes their chemistry all the better. Another person said, it's one of those books that just made me happy when I needed to feel happy about something, and I just want to read about these characters forever. And I won't lie, I definitely agree. The side characters and found family in Casey McQuiston books are definitely what help books stand apart from any other authors in this genre, and I think if you picked this book up, it would be really hard to be disappointed. Next up, a book that I get but don't get at the same time. One that I enjoyed and yet cringed at, The Love Hypothesis by Ellie Hazelwood. This book wasn't at all on my radar before it's released, but it seemed like once it was released, I could not turn my head right or left without seeing ravenous rave reviews for this Raylo fanfiction turned traditionally published romance. This book is about Olive and Adam. Olive is a PhD candidate at a university. I want to say it's like Berkeley or something like that. And Adam is a PhD. He is a professor, but he is one that is definitely grumpy and no one seems to really like him. After a series of strange and seemingly confusing events, Olive and Adam start dating, which proves interesting since Adam is again known as this really grumpy professor on campus. No one seems to be able to like break through or penetrate his facade. He's a hard ass, for lack of a better word, and Olive is this ball of insecure sunshine. So their pairing seems a little bit strange, definitely raises eyebrows, and so they have to work really hard to make this fake relationship be convincing for a number of reasons. Now, their fake relationship is a fanfic lover's wet dream. Bed sharing, lap sitting, you name it, I'm sure the trope is included here in this story. And I think that that's where a lot of the love for this book comes from. The tropes are a lot of fun, and I feel like every time I turned the page, I was waiting for a new trope to pop up, because at the beginning of the story, there is this sort of like established feeling that you are going to get a really tropey and fun fanficky book. This book is not going for realistic at all. And I think honestly, sometimes that's kind of fun. I think for me, my head scratching came from the corniness of this book. I mean, I know it's inevitable with a fanficky, tropey book, but there were some other elements that made this book feel a little bit corny at times, which did keep this from being a perfect romance for me, which is okay. Not every romance is going to land in my Hall of Fame, and to this book's credit, it was one of the more entertaining ones that I read in 2021. Let's hear from the die-hard whole boob and mouth lovers. I love fanfiction, and it turns out I'm willing to forgive the shit being thinly veiled Raylo if the tropes are good. Seriously though, I've reread this book like 3 times and it always slaps. Someone else says, this book is just fun. Also, I'm ace and I super appreciated the casual ace rep. No one ever seems to mention that when they discuss this book. And yet another of you said, some of the most fun I've ever had reading a book. It is unbelievably amusing and entertaining. Is it great writing? No. Is it realistic at all? Also no. But that is what makes it so fun to read. and I can't argue with that. Moving on to the final two. In the comments down below, I would love to know your predictions on what you think the top 2 romances are going to be here on this list. Number 1 will not surprise you. It did not surprise me at all. Number 2 actually did. It was one that I definitely didn't see being on this list at all, let alone in the number 2 spot, but I shouldn't have been surprised because, again, this is a book that I personally really love and enjoy, and y'all seem to love and enjoy it as well. The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. It's definitely a favorite of mine, but I guess given the age of this book and the mixed reviews, I didn't expect to see it here, and I'm just really glad that it is. The Kiss Quotient is about our main character, Stella, who at the start of the story is dumped for her lack of social and sexual prowess. Stella is a badass autistic mathematician, and her solution to her guy-centered woes is to hire a male escort to show her how to get things done. Plain and simple. She's not expecting is a guy as hot as Michael to show up and not only smang her into a new dimension, but also charm her. These sex sessions quickly evolve into something more, and Stella and Michael find that they have more in common maybe than they previously thought, and there is a burgeoning chemistry there that they definitely explore pretty early, despite conflicts attempting to tear these two apart. And it was just a really charming book. I won't lie, I can't remember some of the finer details of the story. It has been a couple of years since I've last read it, but it was one that I remember really, really adoring, and it's one that I have high on my list of contemporary romance faves. And where I fail in fine details, y'all always bring out your big guns. First up, I love how sweet and patient the hero was with the heroine about her overall inexperience with love. It was also nice to see a heroine who's on the autism spectrum. There's also a reversal of the heroine being the one who is more financially affluent than the hero, as compared to many other romances I've read, and it remained really memorable for me. Another review said, it's just so charming and sweet. Michael and Stella are literal soulmates and their chemistry is through the roof. I also appreciated the neurodivergent representation and how the author showcased Vietnamese culture. It was so interesting and insightful. This book was so candid, raw, and honest, while also being light and enjoyable at the same time, considering it dealt with matter that I find triggering. It's something that no other author has made me experience, and one of the main things I love about it. Michael is my man, I love him so much, and he deserves all the happiness he can get. It was also the second romance I've ever read, and I just haven't found anything that tops it. It was also the perfect balance of spicy and sweet. Last, but certainly not least, we have the book that I think most people probably predicted would be number 1 here on this list, and for good reason, because this book is an absolute fucking banger. People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. The one and only Emily Henry book that I have developed an attachment to, and it's one that has me holding out hope that the next Emily Henry book that actually just got a cover release today for will be one that I enjoy. People We Meet on Vacation. This book follows Poppy and Alex, and at the start of the story, Poppy and Alex are in their own separate worlds, and we know that they were formerly friends, but something went wrong during one of their summer vacations. They go on these yearly summer vacations ever since they graduated college. Since Poppy is I was gonna say vacation journalist. I don't know the real technical term for it, but I know that she goes to different travel destinations to blog about it. Something went wrong one summer, and they stopped going on vacations for a couple years until one day Poppy just breaks down and she's like, you know what? I miss my man Alex. I miss my friend. Let me hit him up. Let me see if he'll go on one final vacation with me. And one final vacation they take. It is such a remarkable story. It is everything that my friends to lovers When Harry Met Sally Love and Ass lives for. It's heavy on the romance and less heavy on the other shit that I personally don't really like in Emily Henry stories, and I just feel like this book can do no wrong in my eyes. It's a great blend of sexy and sweet, and I just feel like Alex is the unique hero that we all need. Now, don't get me wrong, I love a grumpy hunk as much as the next gal, but there's something about a guy who's like a little bit anxious and a little bit serious and a little bit of a dorky nerd that I just fucking love. And I feel like we need more of that in stories. Give me some like realistic heroes. How many guys are just walking around with a grumpy personality? I feel like hot dudes are usually happy, but don't take my word for why the story is great. Let's hear from some of you. I have quite a few quotes for this one because it's everybody's favorite. The friends to lovers trope is unmatched. It's more than just a romance. It's about Poppy figuring out who she is and what she wants, and Alex just supporting her every step of the way. And also, Alex Nielsen is just the best book boyfriend. Couldn't argue with that. The author did such a great job building up the history that the hero and heroine had together, which made it easier for us to go root for the romance, considering it is a friends to lovers trope. There was just enough angst that it kept me engaged throughout. Now, here's a really long one. Obviously, this book is extremely popular and overhyped to a lot of people, but I can't think of many other romances that can stand up to this for me. One of my favorite things about Emily Henry is the dialogue she writes between characters and the banner she creates for them. It's realistic, it makes me laugh, and it shows me why, in this case, Alex and Poppy are so good together. It's lighthearted, but at the same time can make me feel so many things. The love they have for each other, the hurt and yearning. I believe everything that happens wholeheartedly. Also, I just love Friends to Lovers and can't think of another traditionally published romance that has done it better than this. And come to think of it, I can't either. Which is why this book snagged the top spot and why I am not surprised that it is number 1. I love this book and you should definitely pick it up. There you have it. Those are the top 10 contemporary romances of all time according to you and kind of according to me as well. Some of these are my favorite. Did any of the picks on this list surprise you? I would love to know in the comments down below, and I would also love to know if you have any recommendations for a top contemporary romance that you did not see on this list so that both I and other people can find new favorites for themselves. I'm also going to leave in the description of this video a list of other books that were nominated but didn't have nearly the same amount of nominations as the top ones on this list, so that maybe you can again find something that wasn't as popular as some of the ones on this list. I know that some of y'all are watching this video and are like, I've read every one of these books. And you know what? I understand that. So I'm gonna leave you some less common options in the description down below. I'm also going to leave a link in the description for a form that you can fill out if you would like to participate in the next round of videos, or I guess video. I'm gonna be doing my dark romance video, my top 10 dark romances of all time video, and I'm very excited for that one. I'm hoping, honestly, that there are some books on that list that are going to be surprising to me, and I'm sure there will be. I'm sure there's going to be some that I have to actually read for that video, which I'm actually kind of looking forward to. So if you would like to participate, click on the link, enter your favorite dark romances, let me know title, author, why you like this book, and if you have multiple submissions, feel free to submit a couple of different times. I had so much fun doing this video, and I'm really excited again at the end of the year to have a playlist of all of these videos that I have enlisted your help for. So thank you in advance for your help. Thank you for watching this video. I love you so much, and until next time.